Hey everybody, this is Arthur, just getting back in touch with everyone. I haven't done a live video like this in a while, but I had a couple of people share with me a really interesting video and then a commentary from Matt Walsh. He's the guy who works for the Daily Wire, and I liked a lot of the sentiments he had to share. I am really grateful, in fact, for Matt Walsh because he is starting to call out the necessary attitude that we need to have in fighting the radical gender ideology that is assaulting children across the country. He harshly criticized this really creepy male influencer, Dylan, I forget his last name, and he pretends to be a woman. He wants to enable the mutilation of minors. He wants to push tampons into male restrooms. He insists on promoting and normalizing this insane, destructive lie that people can change their sex. And he particularly wants to force this on children. So he was extremely harsh and degrading in describing this man. He called him a human deep fake, that he just is a mutilated man who isn't even good at being a man and he's really good at pretending to be a woman. And I didn't find it particularly vicious. It was hardcore because it's supposed to be when you're telling the truth about something. So people were very critical of this, and this was his initial response to many of these critics. The core difference between me and my critics on the right, this is Matt Walsh talking, is that I aim to utterly defeat, humiliate, and demoralize those who castrate children, wage war on the foundations of human society, and attack truth itself, while my critics hope to find common ground with these people. That is an excellent statement of a big reason why conservatives, why the right, why the cultural pushback against the regressive left has been a failure. There continues to be this hope that we can find common ground with the left. You can't find common ground with somebody who refuses to believe that there are only two sexes, for example. Now, one of Matt Walsh's more calm critics commented like this: what you're missing here is that the target is the 80% of Americans who aren't culture warriors, who are just living their lives. You're not going to convince the woke, neither can I, but together we can sway the massive middle by different means. Well, Matt Walsh responded to this sentiment in a longer video, where he made it very clear that his goal is not to win minds, but to defeat, humiliate, and destroy the left, to put an end to their vile fantasies that a man can be a woman, that it's okay to put children under the knife for so-called gender modification. This, I think, has become a real problem for many of the family members, the citizens, the general activists that I've worked with. There's still this commitment. They think that they can change minds, that they're trying to get these awful people pushing these destructive programs who think it's okay to promote Drag Queen Story Hour, that they just don't understand. They've got a wrong set of information, and if you give them the right information, they'll stop doing this. But that's not the case at all. So I want to also add to Matt Walsh's credit that he has called out podcasters who get all excited when a transvestite starts pushing back on gender ideology. One example was there was this one guy in a pink dress, and he completely dismissed this notion of non-binary identity. Matt Walsh mocked this readiness by a lot of conservatives. They get all excited about these so-called conservative LGBT influencers. Why is it ridiculous to Matt? Because even while that transvestite, for example, condemns the concept of a non-binary identity, the guy is promoting another lie by sitting there pretending to be transgender and wearing a dress. He is a man still pretending to be a woman. Now, here's where I criticize Matt Walsh. He is okay, and he is doing very well going after the transgender stuff. But he has said almost nothing about going after the LGB. That's a growing movement right now, and it's appeared on social media, especially Twitter. People are typing LGB but not T. But you see, that's missing it. This is a growing movement on the right that is even trying to form so-called allied connections with people who act out as homosexuals or transgenders. But then they say that they want to stop the grooming of children and they want to stop the medicalization and sexualization of minors. And you see, it's the same problem for that larger subset of people who are practicing perversions. These so called virtuous homosexuals and transgenders are trying to normalize their own lies, their own perversions. Here's an example. One of the so called gays against groomers, his name is Clarkson Lawson, he justified himself claiming that he is not a groomer because he doesn't talk about sex with kids. But the truth is, he wants to depict and normalize homosexual couples. He wants to make it okay to teach kids that it's okay for children to have two mommies or two daddies, and that it is totally normal. Do you understand the same problem here? This ties in with Matt Walsh's very well placed criticism. It's one thing to condemn gender ideology being pushed on kids, like talking about forcing pronouns or telling people they can switch their sex. But at the same time, we have this cohort of so called conservative homosexuals and transgenders that want to normalize the concept of two mommies or two daddies in a home. Not only is that not normal, it's abusive to the children. Children, biologically, psychologically, developmentally, they need their mom and their dad. And if it's a single parent home, if it's a mom who's missing, they need that maternal development, that maternal nourishing from someone else in the family. And the same is true if the father is missing. That paternal development is essential. Last of all, of course, it's a total lie. Every child has a biological mother and father. There is no way that a child could have anything else. You see, the lies are still pervasive from the LGB. And there's a further failure when we hear this argument from a lot of parents' rights groups. Just don't talk about sex with my kid. They don't want to point out the deviant and destructive sexual perversions of the whole LGBT agenda, the whole set of LGBT and other disturbing paraphilias. Why is this a problem? Because LGBT activists will take advantage of that subtle cowardice. And they will then argue, well, if you're not supposed to talk about sex with kids, then you shouldn't suggest that a boy will get married someday to a girl. That's sexualizing a child. They will also assert that teachers or other adults in a setting with children, they should take off their wedding rings or they should hide the pictures of their spouses, male and female, because that is sexuality too. All of this verbal spin goes to show the lengths that so many conservatives will go to in order to avoid saying homosexuality is wrong, transgenderism is wrong. It should not be taught to kids, nor should it be promoted in public. And I'm going to kind of go off script a little bit. It has become very frustrating for me over the last year as I've spoken to more adults and more conservatives who do recognize the destructive aspects of this LGBT agenda, how it's targeting kids, how it is infiltrating the public schools, how it is grooming kids and confusing kids so that they think they can become the other sex. But when I tell them that we have to stand up against the false redefinition of marriage, we have to push back on homosexuality itself. When I start asserting that, you know what, we do have to take a moral stand regarding behavior that happens behind closed doors as well as in the public square, they still push back on it. And then they want to retreat back to, well, at least we agreed to protect the kids. But how did we get to this mess in the first place? How is it that it has gotten to such a point that the children are being targeted like this? Because 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago, we had churches, charities, conservative groups, political movements wanted to take the easy route and hide behind liberty as the final goal, the final standard, the final metric for whatever political activism they wanted to achieve. You can't talk about liberty, however, if you can't define what it means to be free. You can't talk about liberty if you don't know right from wrong. This is where truth comes into play. And all of this brings me back to Matt Walsh. Yes, we do need to confront the left aggressively, demonize their positions, and shame and humiliate them until they are defeated, until we break their will. But it's somewhat disingenuous for Matt Walsh to say that we need to call out transgenderism, but he and his colleagues at the Daily Wire are okay with out homosexual Dave Rubin having his false marriage with another man. And then the two of them celebrate their acquisition of two children via surrogacy. They're not two dads. These are two men in a false marriage pretending to be parents. Conservatives said nothing about Dave Rubin and his fake husband, but they had no problem criticizing Pete Buttigieg with his fake husband and calling him out for taking two children away from their natural parents. Again, does everybody see the problem here? I applaud and I appreciate Matt Walsh's aggressive pushback on the cowardice and the accommodationism among a lot of conservatives and libertarians and nice podcasters who just want likes, views, and shares. But he's not going far enough. And this needs to be an urgency we push on others. It's time to call out not just the left and the right on this issue, but we have to stand for truth and show no compromise in calling out the evils of this LGBT agenda. And this is an agenda that goes beyond trying to push it on kids. This is an agenda which says it's okay for adults to engage in these behaviors, that it's okay for a grown man to pretend to be a woman. No, it's not okay. It isn't a private matter. When a man wears a dress and then goes into a department store and wants to use the women's restroom, it's not a private matter anymore. It wasn't a private matter the moment he walked into the store and presented himself in a deception and expected everybody else to go along with it. It is not a private matter. What two consenting adults do in private sex, it is a private act which should be celebrated and enjoyed privately, but it has public consequences. And it's this deeper theme which is still missing among conservative commentators, philosophers, influencers generally. And above all, it's as simple as there's still a reticence to tell the truth about these behaviors broadly. Until there is a resolute willingness to speak the truth about the entire alphabet of perversions, we will see these piecemeal efforts succeed in the short term but fail in the long term. And even Matt Walsh's ready admission that we have to go scorched earth against this destructive evil, that will still come up short. Because you really can't say you oppose transgenderism if you still think it's okay, or you accommodate two men and calling themselves a married couple. That's transgenderism at its core. Since they've taken the marriage license, the marriage sacrament, they have phased out the distinction of male and female and just replaced it with partner A and partner B. So I'm giving an extensive statement. It's an extensive gratitude that I offer to people who've shared with me Matt Walsh's statements. It's commendable, but there's a lot of work to be done, and we need to do more than try to change minds. We need to actually talk to our own side and tell them to stop being cowardly on this issue. So I appreciate your thoughts on it. You're more than welcome to comment below if you want. I didn't expect my comments to take this long, but to me, it's essential that I was able to encapsulate all these issues at once. So take care. Talk to you later.